My dad walked a realtor into my backyard and told me I was moving to the garage. Reddit stories. He talked about listing my house like it was already his, while my daughter stood frozen in the doorway. That was the moment I realized this wasn't confusion, it was entitlement. Hi. I'm Miles, 38, mechanical engineer, single dad, and apparently the only person in my family who understands what the words "my house" mean. At least, that's what I thought before last Thursday, before my dad walked into my backyard with a realtor, a clipboard, and the confidence of a man who believed property laws were based entirely on birth order. It started at 4:12 p.m. I know the exact time because I was inside helping my daughter, Lily, glue sequins onto a construction paper snowflake. She was so proud of it she held it like a newborn chick. Then I heard voices outside. Not casual voices. Estate sale voices. By the time I stepped onto the patio, Dad was already striding across my yard like a man surveying land he intended to conquer. The realtor trailing behind him was measuring my deck. My sister, Tara, stood by the sliding doors. Her twins zoomed circles on balance bikes, plowing right over Lily's chalk drawings. My drawings. My yard. My home. Dad didn't even turn when I walked out. "Stop being selfish," he said, pointing at my daughter's swing set. "Your sister's twins need a bigger yard." "We're listing the house next week." I blinked. "Listing my house? You'll stay in the garage apartment," he added, waving a dismissive hand like he was assigning seating at Thanksgiving. My brother-in-law, Kyle, gave a laugh that sounded like a guy who never built a thing in his life but loved owning things other people built. "Finally," he said. "A real house for real family." Behind me, Lily froze in the doorway, snowflake in hand. Her small shoulders folded inward. She didn't cry. She just made herself smaller, like that would help. I swallowed the instinct to throat punch Kyle. Instead, I smiled, a thin, survival mode smile left over from childhood. "Got it," I said. Dad looked satisfied, like he'd negotiated a business deal. Lily stepped back inside silently, placing her snowflake on the counter as if it suddenly didn't belong anywhere. And as Dad bragged to the realtor about square footage potential, something in my chest shifted. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. My family wasn't taking my house by accident. They were taking it because they believed I wouldn't stop them. That night, after they left, I put Lily to bed, walked into the living room, and pulled out the first box. If they wanted a reaction, they were about to get one. They just didn't know the story was no longer going to follow their script. Especially after the text that arrived at 11:47 p.m. from an unknown number. "Don't leave. Check the basement. Grandma." I didn't move for a full 10 seconds. The house was dark except for the lamp beside the couch. Lily was asleep upstairs, finally breathing evenly after a day spent trying to disappear into corners. The last thing I expected, after the realtor, the garage apartment decree, and Kyle's real family comment, was a text from a woman who hadn't touched a smartphone in years. Grandma Ruth. But the message was her style. Direct. Minimal. Urgent. "Don't leave. Check the basement. Grandma." The number wasn't hers, but the phrasing? The bluntness? The absolute refusal to pad anything with pleasantries? That was her. My pulse kicked up. I grabbed a flashlight. The basement door creaked like it always did. The air down there carried the cold, dusty stillness of a room people avoided unless something broke. The old freezer hummed in the corner. My dad insisted we keep it plugged in. For emergencies, though it hadn't held food in years. I didn't know what I was expecting. A leak? A box I'd forgotten? Not a loose panel behind the freezer. And yet, when I pulled the appliance forward, the beam of my flashlight slid across a piece of wall that looked wrong. Slightly different paint. A hairline seam where there shouldn't be one. My breath caught. I hooked my fingers into the edge and pulled. The panel came away with a soft pop. Inside, tucked between the studs, was a small metal lockbox. A thick plastic-wrapped envelope, my name written on it in Grandma Ruth's handwriting. A tiny brass key taped to the envelope. My knees almost gave out. I carried everything upstairs to the kitchen table. The house was silent in that eerie, heavy way that makes you aware of every breath you take. I sat. I unfolded the envelope. Grandma's handwriting wasn't shaky. It wasn't confused. It wasn't the scrawl of someone losing their memory. It was deliberate. Miles, if you're reading this, your father is trying to take the house. I'm sorry. I told him no. He didn't listen. This home isn't a prize for whoever shouts loudest. It's yours. You kept it alive. You kept me alive. And you kept that little girl alive when no one else bothered to learn her heart. I had to stop reading for a moment because my throat closed up. I kept going. I changed the trust. I recorded it. He doesn't know. You are the trustee now. Call the attorney listed inside, no one else. And Miles. Check the lockbox. You deserve to know what he's been doing with my money. Love. Grandma Ruth. My hands shook as I unfolded the legal documents inside. A filed, recorded trust amendment naming me sole trustee. A transfer of control for the house. A notarized revocation of my father's authority. Filed. Stamped. Already official. He had marched a realtor across my yard with zero legal right to list anything. But the last thing I opened, the lockbox, was what made the room tilt. Bank statements. Withdrawal slips. Notes in Grandma's handwriting next to lines circled in red ink. Transfers to Dad. Transfers to Tara. Withdrawals that didn't match her care facility's billing. One line had a note beside it. Asked him what this was. He lied. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just greed. This was theft. From his own mother. From the woman whose house he tried to hand to Tara like a party favor. At 1:06 a.m. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the documents. The house wasn't legally his. Never had been. And all his entitlement, every dismissal of Lily, every real family comment from Kyle, every smug assumption, was built on a foundation he didn't even own. Grandma trusted me with everything. And Dad had no idea his entire plan had just set itself on fire. In the silence of that kitchen, with the documents spread before me, I felt something new settle into my bones. This time, I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. By sunrise, the fear was gone. Replaced by something sharper. Purpose. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with Grandma's documents fanned out like playing cards, and dialed the attorney whose number she'd written in her letter. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Halprin speaking. I said my name. He exhaled like a man who'd been waiting for this moment. Your grandmother told me this call would come. I'm glad you reached out before your father tried anything irreversible. I laughed under my breath. He brought a realtor yesterday. Ah, Halprin said. Then things are already worse than she feared. He walked me through everything. The trust was legally airtight. The amendment was valid. I was the trustee, not Dad. I controlled the house, not Dad. Any attempt by him to sell it was fraudulent. When I mentioned the lockbox, Halprin grew quiet. Then he said, Your grandmother suspected misappropriation. We'll need to document everything. I can start proceedings today. Do it, I said without hesitation. Because suddenly every offhand comment my father ever made, your grandma's bills are expensive, she should be grateful, clicked into place. He wasn't paying anything. He was siphoning. We ended the call with a plan. At 9:14 a.m. I made the next step official. I logged into my bank account and shut down everything tied to my parents. Automatic transfers? Cancelled. External connections? Removed. Shared access? Revoked. Confirm. 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 Every click felt like a lock sliding into place. By 9:30 a.m., the only account I funded was my own. And Lily's. Dad noticed by noon. He called 6 times. then Tara. Then my mom. I didn't answer any of them. At 2:15 p.m. their cars rolled into my driveway like an angry parade. Dad marched to my porch with the confidence of a man who believed yelling could undo legal documents. I opened the door just enough to step outside. He went straight to shouting. "What the hell did you do? Why are the transfers blocked? The realtor says the title search failed. What did you pull?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step back. I simply held up the folder of trust documents. "You can't sell the house," I said. "Grandma made me trustee. It's legally mine to manage. Not yours." For the first time in my life, I watched my father's expression break. Not rage. Not disappointment. Shock. Pure, unfiltered shock. "That's impossible," he said. "She would have told me." I shook my head. "She didn't trust you." Tara stiffened. Kyle stopped smirking. I continued, voice steady. "You walked a realtor through my yard with no authority. You tried to evict me and my daughter from a house you don't own. And you drained Grandma's accounts while calling it caregiving." Dad's face went red, then pale. "You think you can talk to me like that?" he hissed. "Yes," I said. "Because the law agrees." He tried to push past me into the house. I didn't move aside. "You're done using me," I said. "No more money. No more manipulation. No more decisions about my life, my house, or my kid." Kyle snorted. "This is ridiculous. Tara has kids. They need the space. And I said, looking him straight in the eye, have a daughter who deserves to know she belongs in her own home." Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. Lily had come to the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She whispered, "Dad?" I turned back to her, gave her a small smile. "It's okay, Lil." Dad didn't even look at her. Not once. That was the moment something inside me snapped clean. Not in anger, in certainty. I stepped inside, reached for the door, and closed it. Not slammed. Closed. Firm. Final. I locked it. Outside, they shouted. Demanded. Threatened. Inside, my daughter slipped her hand into mine. Her voice was small but steady. "We're not moving?" "No," I said. "This is our home." She nodded, and something in her face eased. A small, fragile uncoiling, like she finally believed she wasn't temporary. And in that moment I knew. This fight wasn't about real estate. It was about rewriting a story my family had controlled my whole life. About Lily learning what home actually means. And about me, for the first time, choosing us. The next morning, the group chat my family used for everything they didn't want in writing lit up like a fire alarm. "Tara, Miles, this isn't funny. Dad is having chest pains from stress. Mom, we are family. You don't do this to family. Tara, Kyle is furious." The twins cried all night. "Are you happy? Dad, answer your phone now. Or I'm coming over." I muted the chat. Then I blocked it. Lily and I ate breakfast in silence. Not tense silence, peaceful silence. She sat at the counter drawing a cardinal on a branch. She used the red marker carefully so it wouldn't bleed through the page. Every so often she glanced toward the front windows, checking if anyone was outside. I hated that she even felt the need. "Hey," I said softly. "No one is coming in. They don't make the rules here." She nodded, still watching the window. Then she asked, "Are you in trouble with Grandpa?" I exhaled slowly. "No," I said. "He's in trouble with himself." At 10:17 a.m., the attorney called. "Your father tried to file a listing agreement." I sat back in my chair. Of course he did. The title company stopped it immediately. He continued. "They also reported that he accused them of fraud." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "And my grandmother?" "She's safe. My staff notified her facility this morning. Only you have decision-making rights now." We're advising them to deny your father access until the investigation is complete. I froze. Investigation? Yes, he said calmly. If your grandmother was financially exploited, the state will be involved. We've already flagged several suspicious withdrawals. I swallowed. This wasn't just family dysfunction anymore. This was criminal. At noon, there was pounding on my front door. Hard, heavy blows rattling the hinges. Open this door, Miles! My father shouted. Before I could respond, Lily grabbed my shirt. Don't, she whispered. I rested a hand on her head. I won't. My father alternated between shouting and pacing. I could see his shadow moving under the doorframe. You think you can steal from your own family? He yelled. I took care of my mother for years. I stayed silent. Silence was oxygen to men like him. It made them burn themselves out faster. After a minute, Tara started in. Please, she begged through the door. Kyle might lose his job. We needed that house. You know we needed it. There it was again. Need. Everything they wanted was always rebranded as my responsibility. My kids deserve a yard, she cried. My kid deserves a home, I said through the door. A beat of stunned quiet. Then Kyle's voice sharp, mocking. She's not even your real kid. I swear the temperature in the house dropped 10 degrees. Lily stiffened beside me. I opened the door. Just a lock, one click. Not enough to give them access. Just enough to show my face. Kyle looked smug for exactly 1 second. That was when he saw my expression. What you say about me is one thing, I said, voice completely steady. But if you ever speak about my daughter like that again, I'll make sure you can't come within 50 feet of this property. Do you understand me? Kyle's mouth opened. Closed. Dad jumped back in, trying to redirect. You're being dramatic. She's 8, she'll forget. I stared at him. No, I said quietly. She'll remember. Because I remembered. Every dismissal. Every moment I was told my needs were smaller than someone else's convenience. Every time love was conditional. Lily wasn't going to inherit that. Not from them. And not from me continuing to tolerate it. I shut the door again. Locked it. Deadbolt and latch. This time, the silence outside was longer. Heavy. Confused. They weren't used to me not bending. Not negotiating. Not apologizing. Not cushioning the consequences. Eventually, Dad yelled one last thing. This isn't over. I looked at Lily, who was pressed against my side. Yes, I said softly. It is. And for the first time since the backyard confrontation, I saw her believe me. By evening, the neighbor across the street, Mr. Raymond, retired electrician, professional front porch observer, texted me. Your folks were outside again. Yelling. I told them I was calling the police and they left. You okay? I replied. We're okay. Thank you. He sent back a thumbs up emoji, one of the few he knew how to use, then added. Your little girl painted something on your fence today. Looks nice. I stepped outside to check. There it was. On the inside panel of the fence, our side, Lily had painted a tiny bluebird in bright acrylics. A little crooked. A little abstract. But unmistakably hers. My throat tightened. She was claiming the space. Even while adults tried to tear it away. The next day, the attorney emailed. Subject, preliminary findings. I opened the PDF. It wasn't pretty. Multiple unexplained withdrawals from Grandma's account. Checks made out to cash, in my father's handwriting. A $4,800, home repair, that never occurred. 3 transfers directly to Tara over the past year. At the bottom. Recommendation: consider reporting elder financial exploitation to Adult Protective Services. I leaned back in my chair. So this wasn't just entitlement. It wasn't just arrogance. This was theft wearing the mask of family obligation. I thought back to Grandma's letter. He lied. Now I knew exactly what she meant. At 4 p.m., Tara called again, 3 times. I finally answered, mostly because I was tired of seeing her name flash across the screen. The moment I picked up, she launched in. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I laughed. "You tried to take my house." "I didn't take anything. I just—" She paused, regrouped. "Miles, the twins need stability. So does my daughter." "That's different," she snapped. There it was. The part she always said without knowing she was saying it. "Explain it," I said. My voice was calm, almost conversational. "Explain why it's different," she faltered. "I mean, she's not biologically mine," I finished for her. Silence. Then she said the thing that revealed exactly who she was. "You're being dramatic. We're your real family." I felt something inside me go still. Not break, solidify. "Tara," I said, "family isn't defined by DNA or demands. It's defined by who you protect." She scoffed. "Oh, save the speech." "No," I said. "You save it. For the investigator who's going to ask why Grandma's money was wiring itself into your account." Dead silence. Then a breathless trembling. "What?" "You heard me. Miles," she whispered, "you wouldn't." I already did. Because the moment she tried to put Lily in a garage like a piece of luggage, something old in me died. And something new grew teeth. That evening, Grandma called me herself. Her voice was tired but warm. "Sweetheart," she said, "I heard you found the documents." "I did." "And you saw what your father's been doing?" "I did." She sighed, a small, weary sound. "I'm sorry you have to carry this," she said. "I was trying to protect you and Lily without creating a war." "You didn't create it," I said. "They did." She nodded softly on the other end. Then she said the thing that made every choice I'd made click into place. "You're the only one who treats Lily as if she were born from your bones." My voice caught. Grandma continued, firm now. "That house was never for your sister. It was never for your father. It was meant for the person who would fill it with something worth keeping." She paused. "And Miles, I've never been more certain it's you." After I hung up, Lily came out of her room holding a glass jar filled with firefly decals that glowed in the dark. She said, "Can we put these on the porch so the house won't be scared at night?" I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "Let's do that." We decorated the railing together, soft glowing stickers along the wood. And I realized something. For the first time since this began, the house didn't feel like something I was defending. It felt like something we were building. On Friday morning, I woke to a sound I knew too well. My father's voice. Not shouting. Arguing. With someone on his side of the door. I looked through the peephole. He wasn't alone. A police officer stood beside him. My stomach dropped, not with fear, but with recognition. This was Dad's oldest trick. When he couldn't control the story, he brought in someone who would. Or who he thought would. I opened the door just enough for the officer to see me. "Morning," I said calmly. Dad immediately pointed at me like a kid tattling to a teacher. "He's withholding property. He's illegally occupying the house. My mother's house." I didn't look at him. I addressed the officer. "Hi. I'm Miles Bennett. I have the documents you'll want to see." Dad blinked. No. "No. You don't talk to him. I'm talking to him." The officer held up a hand. "Sir, let him speak." Dad shut his mouth, stunned that someone wasn't obeying him on reflex. I stepped outside and handed the officer a manila folder. Inside were the trust amendment, the file deed assignment, the notarized revocation of Dad's authority, a letter from Grandma's attorney confirming I was trustee. The officer skimmed the top page. His eyebrows rose. "Sir," he said slowly to my father, "he's the legal trustee. You have no authority over the property. My dad's face contorted. That's forged. My mother would never. It's recorded with the county, I said. You can look it up. The officer flipped a page. Sir, unless you have court paperwork superseding this, which you don't, you need to leave this property. You have no claim here. Dad sputtered. Actually sputtered. My mother would. She did, I cut in. She chose me. His jaw snapped shut. He looked disoriented. Like the world had shifted under his feet and no one warned him. The officer handed back the documents. Everything appears valid. This is his home. You can't attempt to force a sale, remove him, or enter without permission. Dad stared at me, eyes burning. You think you've won? No, I said quietly. I think I've stopped losing. The officer stepped forward slightly. Sir, you need to leave. My father turned and walked down the steps stiffly, his shoulders square but his steps uneven, like pride was holding him up where logic had abandoned him. He muttered, "This isn't over," as he reached the sidewalk. The officer replied, "Actually, sir, in terms of property rights, it is." Dad froze. The officer got into his car and left. I closed the door, locked it, turned around, and saw Lily standing at the end of the hall, rabbit tucked under her arm, worry etched across her small face. "Did he try to take our house again?" she asked. I knelt beside her. "No," I said. "He can't. Not anymore." She studied my face. "Because Grandma said it was for us?" I nodded. "Exactly." She thought for a long second. Then she asked in the smallest voice, "Are we safe now?" That question, 8 years old, too wise, too tired, hit me harder than anything Dad had said. I put my hands on her shoulders. "Yes," I said. "We're safe." For the first time in days, she believed me without hesitation. Her shoulders lowered. Her breath steadied. She leaned forward and hugged me, tight and sudden. "I like our house," she said. "It feels like it can breathe again." I closed my eyes. "So can we." That night, something shifted in me. All these years, I'd believed my family's chaos was a storm I just had to endure. But storms don't own you. They just pass through. This was the first moment I realized. I wasn't living through a storm anymore. I was standing in the doorway of a home that finally, belonged to the people who cared for it. And Dad? Dad was discovering what happens when the person he always counted on finally stops showing up. My father didn't disappear, he regrouped. People like him always do. By Sunday, the family group chat had been resurrected in a new, even more unhinged form, led by Tara this time. Apparently, Dad's ego had taken enough hits, so she stepped in as spokesperson. "Tara, we need to talk as a family. Tara, what you're doing is tearing us apart. Tara, Dad hasn't slept. Mom is crying nonstop. Tara, Grandma is confused and upset you're isolating her." I stared at that last one. Grandma had literally called me 2 days earlier to tell me she was proud of me. I typed one sentence. "Don't use Grandma as a shield. She knows exactly what's happening." Tara read it instantly. 3 typing dots appeared. Then, "Tara, you're being manipulated by her. She's old. She doesn't know what she's signing." Oh. Okay. There it was. The moment Tara inadvertently confessed she didn't see Grandma as a person anymore, just a tool. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked the group. Families shouldn't be managed like crisis PR campaigns. Monday afternoon, the school called. Not because Lily was in trouble, because she had asked her teacher a question that made the counselor want to check in. "Lily asked?" the counselor said gently. "If grown-ups take your house, do you still get to keep your bed?" I closed my eyes. I had expected the fallout to land on me. Not on her. "I've reassured her," the counselor continued. "But she's clearly worried about her home being taken away. Is something happening at home?" For a moment, I stood completely still. Then the truth came out. My family tried to force us out of our house, I said. But they can't. Everything is secure now. The counselor's voice softened. If you'd like, I can meet with her this week. Just to help her feel grounded again. Yes, I said. Please. When I picked Lily up from school, she held my hand tightly the whole walk to the car. Before I could even ask how her day was, she said, Dad, I don't want to move to the garage. I kneeled beside her right there on the sidewalk. You're not, I said. That apartment was never for you. This house is your home. She swallowed. But Grandpa said. I know what he said. I interrupted gently. And he was wrong. Her brow knitted. He sounded so sure. That's because he wanted something, I said. People who want something really badly can sound confident even when they're wrong. She thought about that. Then she said, I feel better when you say it. That hit me like a punch and a blessing at the same time. I'll keep saying it, I told her. For as long as you need. She nodded, gripping my fingers tighter. That evening, I sat at the dining table reviewing more of Grandma's documents. Names. Dates. Withdrawals. Every line was a breadcrumb leading to a version of my family I didn't want to know existed, but needed to. My father had built his entire identity on being the responsible one. The caretaker. The patriarch. The one who always paid. Except he didn't. He used me. And he drained Grandma. It was all a performance, funded by someone else's effort. When that realization clicked into place, it was strangely freeing. Like watching the last piece of an illusion disappear. Suddenly, I understood why he reacted with such panic when I stopped paying. People who depend on your silence always call you selfish when you speak. At 8:40 p.m., a knock sounded at the door. Not angry. Not violent. A single, cautious knock. I opened the door to find my mother standing there alone, clutching her purse like a life preserver. She looked smaller than I remembered. Miles, she said, voice thin. Can we talk? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, blocking her view of Lily in the living room. She twisted her hands. Your father is upset. He says you're turning everyone against him. I'm not turning anyone, I said. His actions are. Her eyes filled with something, a mix of pleading and fear. You know how he gets, she whispered. If you don't bend, he'll break. I almost laughed. Because she didn't realize I had already broken. Once. Years ago. When Lily came into my life, I rebuilt myself differently. I'm not bending anymore, I said quietly. And he can't break me the way he used to. My mother swallowed hard. You're choosing that little girl over your own family? My jaw clenched. That little girl is my family, I said. She's the only one who never asked me for anything but love. Mom flinched like the words physically hit her. Then she said the sentence that revealed everything about why she stayed married to my father. We need him. And he needs you. No, I said. You need him to be someone he isn't. And he needs me to stay small. My mother closed her eyes, shoulders shaking. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. You can't, I said. Because it's not broken. It's finally honest. She looked at me for a long, trembling moment. Then she turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling the strangest combination of grief and relief. Not because I'd lost anything, but because I'd finally stopped pretending it was mine to hold. When I stepped back inside, Lily was sitting on the rug with her sketchbook. She held up a new drawing, a house with glowing windows, a tree with green dots for leaves, a bluebird on the fence. Is this us? I asked. She nodded. It's our house. I made the lights big so it looks warm. I smiled. It is warm, I said. Because you're in it. And for the first time in years I realized. I wasn't fighting to keep a building. I was fighting to keep a life. A life Lily and I had built quietly, gently, and without anyone else's permission. The next 48 hours were quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the world was holding its breath. No calls. No surprise driveway invasions. No group chat explosions. I wasn't naive enough to think it meant surrender. It meant strategy. When my family went silent, it meant they were regrouping, redrawing their battle plan. But I didn't wait. I made my own moves. Thursday morning, I drove to Grandma Ruth's assisted living for a scheduled meeting with the director, one her attorney recommended. When I walked in, Grandma was in the common room, knitting a scarf in a color I'm 90% sure she made up. She looked up, eyes brightening. "There's my boy," she said. "Not my son, not my grandson. My boy." Claim and affection wrapped in 2 words. The director led us into her office. Files already on the desk. A small pitcher of water. A notepad waiting for signatures. "This meeting is to update your grandmother's care plan," the director said. "And to confirm legal authority." Grandma straightened her back despite her aching hip. "I want my affairs handled by Miles," she said. "Not my son." Nobody argued. Not even the director. Because the paperwork, Grandma's signed trust, the revocation of Dad's power of attorney, was already filed. "We just need your signature for our internal records," the director said. Grandma took the pen with a steady hand. Then she wrote her name. Not shaky. Not confused. Decisive. When the meeting ended, Grandma squeezed my hand. "You're doing the hard thing," she said softly. "But the right thing." I blinked, my throat tightening. "I hate that it hurts her," I whispered. Grandma didn't ask who her was. She knew. "That's because you're a good man," she said. "But pain and harm aren't the same thing. Remember that." On the drive home, my dashboard lit up with 3 missed calls and 1 voicemail. All from Dad. I didn't listen. I pulled into the driveway and saw Lily in the backyard with her jacket half-zipped, crouching beside the little maple tree we planted. She was poking a stick into the soil like she was checking on the roots. When she heard me, she stood and waved. "Dad! I think it's growing." I walked to her and knelt beside the sapling. "It is," I said. "You gave it a good home." She smiled, full smile, not careful. Not the small folded-up smile she used to give around my family. It hit me then. Everything I was doing wasn't about winning. It was about making sure she never had to shrink herself to fit someone else's comfort. That night, around 9:30, Dad finally switched tactics. He sent a photo. A picture of Grandma and me from 10 years ago, my college graduation. Her stealing my cap. Me laughing like I didn't have a worry in the world. No text. Just the picture. A gilt grenade. At 9:36, another message arrived. "Dad, I hope you know what you're doing. We're family. You don't throw that away." I stared at it for a long time. Then, for the first time since setting a boundary, I felt something shift inside me, not anger, not fear. Clarity. I typed back. "Family is not something you take from. It's something you protect. I'm protecting mine." He read it immediately. But this time, no response. The next morning, Lily came into the kitchen with bed hair and her stuffed rabbit under one arm. "Do we need to pack today?" she asked. I lifted her into a hug. "No," I said. "Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever because someone else tells us to." She relaxed into my chest, her arms wrapping around my neck. "Oh," she whispered. "Good." Then she added, like it had been sitting heavy in her mind, "I like our house." I kissed her hair. "I do too." For the first time in months, the house felt like ours again. Not borrowed. Not threatened. Not hanging by the thread of someone else's entitlement. Ours. And as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me and said, "Dad, do trees get scared when people yell?" I smiled softly. "No," I said. "Trees know who planted them." She nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes. I watched her for a moment, The soft rise and fall of her breathing, the stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. The child my father once dismissed as not real family. The child I would burn the world down to protect. And I knew then. This wasn't the end of the story. But it was the end of their control. Dad always struck when he thought the dust had settled. And sure enough, 3 days after his silence, I got an email. Not a text. Not a voicemail. An email. Subject line: formal notice. My stomach sank, not with fear, but with bone-deep exhaustion. I opened it. Inside was a PDF attachment, and a message so self-righteous it practically smelled like aftershave. Miles, per legal advice, I'm requesting full access to the home for inspection and appraisal. This is still a family asset, and your refusal to cooperate is financially damaging. We will be bringing a contractor this week. Dad? I almost laughed. Inspection? Appraisal? Contractor? It sounded like he Googled how to intimidate someone with real estate, and picked the first 3 terms he understood. But then I opened the PDF. It was a typed letter on a template he clearly downloaded, claiming he had beneficiary rights over Grandma's property and demanding immediate access under threat of legal escalation. It wasn't legally sound. But it was dangerous in a different way. Because it told me something important. Dad had realized the house wasn't just a house. It was leverage. A resource. A shield he wanted back. I forwarded the email to Grandma's attorney. His response came 10 minutes later. Do not reply. Do not let him in. He has no rights. I'll handle this. 5 minutes later, he sent a second message. Also, locking your gates wouldn't be a bad idea. Noted. That evening, Lily and I were cooking spaghetti. Well, Lily was supervising, by stirring the sauce like she was steering a ship, when headlights swept across the front window. A truck. My dad's. Of course. He got out fast, like he expected to catch me doing something illegal. He marched straight toward the porch. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so Lily wouldn't hear. Dad didn't bother with greetings. You're going to let me inside, he said. Calm, firm, like an order to a server who got his entree wrong. No, I said. That one word seemed to hit him harder than any argument could have. Your sister needs that house, he snapped. Do you know what she's dealing with? The twins need space. They're cramped. Kyle's job is unstable. Tara is exhausted. Meanwhile you're— He waved his hand at my chest. Hogging the only family property we have. Grandma's property, I corrected. Not the family's. And she chose me to run it. Dad's nostrils flared. She was manipulated. That's an incredibly bold accusation, I said, for someone who siphoned money out of her accounts. His face drained of color. For the first time in my life, I saw something behind his eyes that wasn't anger. It was fear. You don't know what you're talking about, he said. I do, I said calmly. I've seen the statements. I've seen the notes she wrote. She asked you what the withdrawals were for, and you lied. He blinked twice rapidly. It was the closest thing my father had ever given to a confession. You think you're some kind of hero? He hissed. You think you're saving everyone? You're tearing this family apart. No, I said. I'm ending a system where you use people until they're empty. His jaw clenched so tight the muscles twitched. Then he changed tactics, again. He leaned in, lowered his voice, and tried to go for the artery. You're doing all this for that little girl, he said. For someone who isn't even. I stepped forward sharply. He shut his mouth. Because he'd seen it. The one line I would never let him cross. Finish that sentence, I said softly, and you lose the privilege of ever knowing her name. He swallowed. You think you can threaten me? No, I said. I can protect her. He seethed, chest rising and falling in rapid bursts. You're going to regret this. He spat. Then he walked away. Not stomping, not shouting. Just retreating. And that scared me more than any explosion of his ever did. Because retreat meant regroup. Regroup meant escalation. I stayed on the porch until his truck was gone. When I finally went inside, Lily was sitting on the couch hugging her rabbit. She looked up. Was Grandpa mad again? I forced my voice steady. He's confused, I said. But it's not our job to fix that. She nodded slowly. Are we still staying? For good, I said. She let out a breath she'd been holding for weeks. Maybe months. Her small hand slipped into mine. Warm. Trusting. Certain. And in that moment, something clicked into place. I wasn't fighting my father anymore. I was defending my daughter. My family. My home. And the war he thought he was starting? He already lost the moment Grandma wrote my name on that envelope. Dad never filed anything. Never called a lawyer. Never showed up again. He'd bluffed his whole life. This time, the bluff finally hit a wall he couldn't push through. Spring came. The maple tree sprouted its first leaves. Lily painted a birdhouse to match them, green roof, tiny heart on the front. One evening she said, I like our life now. It feels ours. I looked at the house, at her, at the quiet. It is, I said. And no one's taking it again.